Call Don now, 682-1270. News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back. It's 7:07, and we're going to go right to the phones. We have a special guest. He's the editor and compiler of a new book called The State of the American Mind. On the line, we have Dr. Mark Baurlein. Good morning.
I'm glad to join you.
Well, it's a pleasure having you here. And when I first heard about this book, I was fascinated by the premise of the book. And we'll get to that in a second, but I figured I'd just give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and how it pertains to this particular subject.
Sure. I'm a college teacher at Emory University in Atlanta, and I also do some magazine work for First Things magazine, the monthly magazine of religion and culture. And my co-editor, Adam Bello, is a book publisher, editor. He works a lot in media, so we pay attention to the intellectual things going on, and we're interested in what Americans think. What do they know? How much of their history do they know? Do they understand the principles of American government? Do they know what their politicians are doing? Do they listen to intelligent radio and read newspapers? And are the institutions that are supposed to make them into responsible, informed, discerning citizens doing their job? And so we asked a bunch of social scientists and academics to weigh in on different aspects of what we just call the collective American intelligence, the American mind. And what they come up with using good, solid empirical evidence is a pretty dark picture.
Well, and this is something you hear people talking about this all the time, about the quote unquote dumbing down of America. But there, until now, there really wasn't a whole lot of empirical scientific evidence. You're putting that to page here. I mean, this is good evidence of what a lot of people had a gut feeling about for years.
We've got a lot of deteriorating habits, and we have a lot of scores on various achievement levels that indicate something going wrong. For instance, SAT reading scores are at their lowest point in 50 years. SAT writing scores, the SAT added a writing test in 2005. Those scores have gone down every year except twice when they were flat. You ask employers, and what they will tell you is they'll start screaming about recent college graduates who don't have the basic literacy and numeracy skills to do the work, not to mention the decaying soft skills, those things like showing up on time, not looking at your Facebook page all the time. And when we look at the digital age, I mean, what we find is more and more people are just enveloped in a social media bubble. I mean, young people with a mobile device now send or receive 3,500 text messages every month. They do 250 phone calls every month. They walk around with 200 pictures of themselves in their pockets. I mean, half of the photos they share on Instagram are selfies. So these are numbers. These are the facts, and they do signal a severe civic deterioration.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is something I've been interested in for a while, and maybe you could give me a little bit more of an educated insight to it. But it almost seems like we've gotten to the point, especially where younger people, millennials, and even younger generations have become so narcissistic that their self-image is placed above any other pursuit. I mean, academic pursuit, job pursuits, any of that really doesn't matter. If they have a lot of likes on Instagram, that's better than having a job to some people.
Their friends are profoundly important to them. Their social circuit is where all the meaning comes from. If you mention to them the Cold War, that's like caveman days to them. They have no interest in that. The digital age has given them, from age 10, 11, 12 onward, when they get their Facebook pages and their mobile devices, that's given them a world of self-reflection. They can put pictures of themselves out there. They can have people comment. They can send text messages that are always about what they are doing and what their friends are doing. And while we thought the digital age was going to open people up to the great worlds of knowledge and civilization and geography and current events, no, it has wrapped them more and more in a social bubble. And the digital media encourages it. I mean, remember what the motto of YouTube was. The original motto was, broadcast yourself. That's what it's about.
Well, and if you go there, half of the videos are just someone sitting in front of their computer rambling on incoherently for an hour about some subject that they're upset about.
Indeed. I mean, we do have more intelligent media today than ever before, and a lot of it is on the web. But at the same time, we have an avalanche of junk. More of that than ever before, and you have to wade through miles of quicksand before you can filter it all out and get to, again, intelligent material. And one of the things in our book is numbers on how often people follow the news. Do they watch intelligent television? Do they watch intelligent radio that discusses? Do they read the newspaper? And this is if they don't. This is, again, a civic disengagement, and the founders would be appalled that people aren't paying attention to the news the way they're supposed to.
Well, and so I mean, you're making an argument that this anti-intellectualism really is a danger to our very liberty as a country. I mean, can you kind of explain how that would work?
Well, American democracy gives people a lot of freedoms. We've got a lot of individual liberties out there, although we do find those are steadily shriveling. But the founders understood that with that comes a lot of responsibility. I mean, the sovereignty is in the people. Well, that means the people have to pay attention. They have to know what their leaders are up to. They have to know what kind of deals and agreements are being made. And if they don't, the founders knew that the leaders of the country would start sliding into softer forms of corruption and then harder forms of corruption. It's going to happen because people are people. They knew this. And the eye of the citizenry is what keeps them honest, more or less. And we need journalists to focus that eye on them. If the people aren't paying attention, we are going to get money and corruption and everything happening, and the people are going to end up with the leaders they deserve.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned journalism, because I think that's also part of this. I mean, and I don't mean to beat up on any particular websites or not, but everybody knows these websites, and it all goes back to social media. They'll give you some kind of clickbait headline, and then you go to it, and it's a slideshow of, Kim Kardashian's 10 best dresses or something like that. And right. People consider that journalism. And meanwhile, that journalist that went to journalism school and has a degree could be out covering something a little bit more serious, and we'd be in a little bit better shape.
Well, we need investigative work out there. We need journalists to do that. I mean, if we take a case like Lois Lerner and the IRS and the targeting, who knew what was going on? Who would know what was going on if they hadn't had that press conference? They planted that question there, and then it all started to come out and unravel. If you want done with the press, you're going to have more and more bureaucrats in there misbehaving. And who knows right now how many officials in government are misbehaving. Happens all the time. And, we should expect that. We shouldn't be appalled by it. It's going to happen.
Well, they're human beings.
They're human beings. And so we need that external coverage. That's what keeps people honest, when they have a sense of someone is paying attention. I'm a public official. The public is watching. So this is crucial. I mean, the founders did not like journalists. In fact, they despised journalists. But they wrote that into the First Amendment because they knew that the journalist was an essential component of a free republic. So, but it only works if the people are paying attention. If the journalist has no audience, the best investigations, the most sound coverage of things amounts to nothing.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I think that's that's a perfect example of how our society has been endangered by this obsession with non-intellectual pursuits. And look, I'll watch football on Sunday. I even watch pro wrestling, but I also try to balance that with something a little bit heavier. We'll just say.
Yeah, sure. Well, we all like being entertained, but we do have to have that vigilance and realize that bread and circuses is not a healthy condition. We need to have people realize that when, as the Obama administration did after the marriage decision last month, they illuminated the White House in rainbow colors, this was turning the people's house into a billboard for partisan political expression. This should never, ever happen, especially when you've got a deeply controversial issue like the same-sex marriage issue. The 40% of people who were upset by that decision in this country, well, they look at that White House that night and they see the president has taken us by the scruff of the neck and rubbed our faces in the dirt. That's what that meant. If you have a proper sense of civic principles and U.S. history, you would realize what an abomination this is. But in the media world, what I saw was all these people talking about how cool this was, how neat it was. I want to say, have you lost any sense of civic purpose here? Are you so partisan that you don't see that this is a place, the White House should not be a place where partisanship should be displayed?
Well,
you're converting it into an advertisement.
Well, and not only that, I even saw a few people that were fine with the decision that didn't like the showmanship of the whole thing. I mean, it really was a giant middle finger to everyone that disagrees. We won, you lost. You have to deal with it now. And then, of course, it all circles back to social media. A lot of people that had absolutely no interest in this before changed their colors to rainbow colors, and they're all cool, and they think the president's cool, and the whole thing stinks to high heaven. Well,
we'll see how that decision goes down. I mean, after the Roe v. Wade decision in the early 70s, the Supreme Court justices were shocked that 6 months later this was still controversial. They believed we've made our decision, the issue's now going to go away. Well, the issue hasn't gone away. Abortion is just as controversial today. In fact, it's more so now that we have, we have ultrasound and more digital photography, and then the Planned Parenthood scandal. This is not going away. I don't know if the marriage issue is going to go away either. We'll see what happens.
Well, it's already morphed into the next thing. I mean, it's going to be It's going to be transgender stuff next. I mean, that's the next way, because there's always something new that they have to move on to.
Well, progressivism can never rest. That means it's not making progress anymore. So if you're a progressive, it is eternal revolution. That's your goal. And it's very hard to look back and say, all that money we put into building those skyscraper housing projects for low-income people, those were an absolute disaster that destroyed many, many lives. Maybe we ought to rethink what we're doing. You don't have that reflection in a progressivist. They're always looking toward the future.
Oh yeah,
the next task.
It's revolution for the sake of revolution.
Yeah. If you're not engaged in some kind of attack upon the status quo, upon certainly traditional values, well then you're not doing the right thing. I mean, this is what we could say is the formula for progressivism in the last 60 years. What progressivism has done is to chip away at the institutions that helped people sustain stable, prosperous, healthy, happy lives. Churches, families, their policies have disrupted those things. Well, the human catastrophes followed. We know what happens to children who grow up without a father in the home, especially young boys who become men and have a very hard time behaving in a responsible, respectful, and circumspect fashion. Well, so what's the progressivist answer? Not to try to restore the family. Instead, it is to try to create more government programs to deal with these social pathologies that follow. So it's a bad solution to a self-created problem. But this is the process. The deterioration of private and familial and religious institutions so that the state can expand. And one of the things that we have in our book is data by Nicholas Eberstadt on the percentage of Americans who are under some kind of poverty, unemployment, food stamp, some kind of means-based assistance. It is now 49% of Americans, children and adults, live in households getting a check from the government. And not all of them live in poverty either. The assistance can go well above the poverty line. Now, we know what happens when people get money and we don't ask anything of them in return. They just qualify because they don't have enough money. After a while, they start to believe they deserve it. This is the entitlement mentality. This is where the American mind comes into play. They believe certain things about themselves. They have a relationship to the government of indebtedness. The government is in debt to me, not I am receiving support from the government. I deserve this check. So this is what could be farther from the old virtue of self-reliance. Henry Thoreau, going out into the woods, living on his own. Ben Franklin, showing up in Philadelphia, 13 years old. He's a runaway. He doesn't have any money, but he's got a good work ethic, and he reads, and he has civic virtue. That was the model. Booker T. Washington, same thing. That, I'm afraid, that whole ethos of self-reliance, self-made man, I'm afraid that is over.
Well, and that's turned into a 23-year-old bachelor's degree graduate that can't even fill out a job application. That's where we're at now. And
he went into debt $90,000 to get that college education, to major in film direction, and he can't find any job that fits with his passion, and so he's not going to pay back those loans. He's not going to be a productive citizen for several years, but we're on the hook for it. The federal government insures those loans, guarantees them. The college gets its money, the banks get their money, and the parents are dismayed, and the rest of us taxpayers pick up the check.
Yeah, and then the student just defaults on the loan, and he doesn't care about that because he's not making any money to pay any other credit card bills, so he doesn't worry about wrecking his credit rating.
Well, and here's the attitude. He believes he has been cheated. He's been led to believe that he deserves that job. He went into all that debt thinking that, well, I'm following the rules. Okay, most of that debt was unnecessary, but he did it anyway. So it's going to take him a few years to wise up and realize the world isn't out here as your playground, and the rest of us shouldn't have to pay your way.
Oh, you mean that film studies degree doesn't mean he gets $100 million to make the next blockbuster right out of school?
He's talented, he's got ideas, and he has passion. Why shouldn't his career go the way George Lucas's career did?
Yeah, well, the funny thing about Lucas is, he struggled for years. I mean, even Star Wars wasn't expected to be a hit. So, but people don't remember that. They just remember. Well, George Lucas was a film major. Well, I can do that too.
Or they see Mark Zuckerberg as a billionaire before age 30.
Yeah, for just creating a website. They don't really understand unless they saw the movie, and even then they probably just think it's a movie. But they don't understand the hundreds and hundreds of hours of work that went into just getting things launched, and then the 20-hour days that he puts in to keep it running. And
then LeBron James didn't go to college. He didn't read books. He didn't do his homework. He was just out there on the court getting better and better. Why can't I do that too?
Well, I can't because I'm 5'8", and have 2 feet.
I see a lot of 5'8" high school basketball players thinking that if they really work hard, they have a shot at the NBA. The odds are about one in a million, but that's the dream. And in America today, we have lost the Protestant work ethic, so that we don't want to dissuade any young people from their dreams. We don't want to say, that passion of yours, it's idiotic, never going to pan out. We don't want to say that anymore because we live in this therapeutic society. As Dennis Prager puts it in our volume, we live in the age of feelings. How you feel is what counts. Do you have strong self-esteem? This then prevents us from the old accountability and doing things like having the old distinction between the deserving poor and the undeserving poor. The deserving poor is the woman with 2 kids whose husband dies, and she's got to struggle to get through. She's the deserving poor. The undeserving poor is the person who simply engages in the repeated self-destructive behavior that puts him or her in need all the time. That is the undeserving poor, and the best thing you can do for that person often is cut that person off.
Yeah, and of course, the politicians don't want to do that because that person goes out and votes sometimes more than once.
That person is mean. I mean, I remember in a town hall meeting in 2012 during the campaign, I was listening to this on the radio, and Mitt Romney was running the town hall meeting, and a young woman got up and asked a question or made a statement in the back. She said, "I'm so-and-so, I've got a young daughter. I want her to grow up in a world in which people are kind to one another and life is supportive and the environment is clean," and she listed several progressive outlooks. And then she finished off by saying, "and where all contraception is free." That, it's free. Well, now Mitt Romney gave a horrible answer to this. He just blurted out, well, if you want free stuff, just vote for the other guy. Well, the answer to Mitt Romney on that one is, hey, Mitt, she's going to. You just guaranteed it. Instead, I mean, that was a CEO talking. That wasn't a president talking. And that was one of the great problems with Mitt Romney's candidacy. What he should have said there was, no, ma'am, you understand that contraceptives aren't free. It costs money to make them and distribute them. You understand that. So when you say it's free, we really mean free to you. Now, who do you want to pay for it? Someone has to get paid. Tell me who should pay for it. I mean, make it into a substantive point there. I'm afraid, though, our conservative politicians don't know how to talk this way.
Well, and I think a lot of that, is abject fear of being cast as mean by the very same journalists that we talked about earlier. I mean, it's all right. Kind of it's all cogs in a big machine, really. So I guess the bottom line with this is there anything that can be done about this? I mean, can this trend be reversed?
Well, one thing to say to the parents in your audience and young people who may be listening. Our economy, our businesses, our professions, the sciences, the law schools, our economy rewards people who have strong work ethic, who are informed, who know what's going on in the world, who try to raise their vocabulary level, who don't spend time watching the Kardashians or on Facebook all the time. Law schools like those people. They need those kind of young people. The parents, if you make your kids into book readers, newspaper readers, intelligent media listeners who have conversations in which they don't put the like in every sentence, and I was like, and it was just like, don't speak this way. Your professors will love you, and your employers will love you. When I ask a question in class, I'll teach freshmen. When I ask a question about the Cold War, and only one kid raises his hand, I love that kid. The boss who sees the new worker arrive 10 minutes early, that's only 10 minutes out of that young worker's life. But to the boss, that is highly meaningful. So you can be confident that the more our culture and civics deteriorate, the better you will look by comparison if you haven't deteriorated. So that's one thing. The second thing I think is that our country is a very old country. Our government is a stable government. And I think we are the greatest national force for good on earth in the last 200 plus years. We've had bad times. We've had periods of decay, and we've had great leaders step forward, and we've had populist movements spring up that reinvigorated the public sphere. It's going to happen. We have all the reason in the world to be confident that it will happen. Some people thought Barack Obama was going to be it during his 2008 campaign. He got caught up in the fever of hope and change. He showed himself, after only a few months in office, that he was just a campaign politician. He wasn't a civic leader. He's never going to be a civic leader. That's not him. But someone will. We will see this happen. It's hard to tell who it might be. Sometimes these people don't show up until they get into those circumstances and do become the leader that we need.
So, and the bottom line is that as American people, there's always someone that will step forward. It's just a question of holding on until that person comes around.
Right, and in your own life, you do the things you're supposed to do. You don't spend all day on the couch just flipping through the channels on the satellite. You don't get your news from Jon Stewart. You should know better than, Jon Stewart's shtick is you take quotes out of context, you make your prissy little face about it and smirk, and then you drop a few F-bombs, and your audience roars.
We're so smart now.
Yes.
Jon Stewart, I saw this on The Daily Show. It must be true.
Right. The idea that Jon Stewart should be such an influential figure, there's a sign of where our civic life lies.
Well, he's wearing a suit and he has gray hair now.
Yeah.
And that's how shallow it is. He sits behind a desk, he shuffles through some papers. He's got salt and pepper hair. He's wearing a nice suit. He looks like a younger version.
Polished.
He looks like a younger version of Walter Cronkite without the voice. And
he has the president on, and he refers to the president as dude.
Yeah.
Dude. That's the office of the presidency these days.
Well, there's always room to turn things around. So I'm glad to hear that this decline isn't inevitable. But I think
there's a lot of dissatisfaction out there. People are disgusted with everything among the elites. They're so sick of being talked down to by all kinds of elites. They're sick of college professors. They're sick of egotistical media commentators, and they despise politicians. They know that the political class is really out for itself. When they see Lois Lerner up there in front of the Senate committee declaring that she did nothing wrong and then taking the fifth, we look at her and we feel like we're little people. We're just functions in the minds of the political class, and they live by different rules than the rest of us, and we're sick of it.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a lot of that. I even get a lot of calls like that to the show. So I think there's a bit of a movement going. It might take a little while to get going, but I think we might be heading in the right direction. If anybody's just joining us, we're talking with Mark Baurlein, the author of The State of the American Mind, 16 leading critics on the new anti-intellectualism. We only have a few minutes left. I'd like to let everybody know where they can find you and where they can find your book.
Well, we have a website. We always have a website. No caps, no punctuation, just stateoftheamericanmind.com. And, of course, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and the Templeton Press website.
Okay, and that's one website you can spend some time at. You're allowed to spend time there.
You certainly can.
Yeah, but
yes. We have excerpts on there. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is definitely a fascinating topic, and hopefully we get a chance to talk about it again sometime soon. Any closing thoughts?
Well, the thing to do is get involved, speak your mind, use the internet to voice things. If you go into a store, as I did the other day, and see vulgar food store as a cheese shop, vulgar statements, almost obscene sexual statements about how yummy the cheese is. It was, frankly, sexual statements. You don't like it? Write to them. Tell them. Speak up. If you look around, you see people doing something wrong, say so. If you're on the bus, some young people get on, and they're using obscene language, tell them to stop. We need less timidity in our society today. We need more people to stand up and try to improve the public square.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I think it just takes a little bit of a backbone and a little bit of self-confidence and knowing that what you're doing is right, and just speak up. That's all you got to do, and you do it in a polite way.
Yeah,
you don't
with
have
a smile.
Yeah. I think you're on the right track. I think we're maybe on the edge of something special. Again, Mark Baurlein, The State of the American Mind, stateoftheamericanmind.com or Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the usual places. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a fascinating conversation, and hopefully we can talk again sometime soon.
That would be great.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, bye-bye.
And we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. News Talk 1270 KIML.
You're listening to Don Carpenter on Gillette's Heritage Station. News Talk 1270 KIML, 70 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 KIML.